All right, everybody. Welcome to the Agrarian Matters podcast. And I'm here today with Ben Calkins.
Nelson, but...
Oh,
Calkins.
Nelson.
My last name's Nelson. But
really? This whole time?
Yeah.
We've been talking?
Yeah.
So, I guess we should start there then. Because previously, it was John Calkins?
Yeah, my uncle.
Okay, it was your uncle.
Yeah.
And I met him quite a number of times. And he passed away recently?
Yep, December of last year.
December. Oh, so it's coming almost to that year.
Yep.
Yeah, pretty close. Well, take me back a little ways. Like, how did the farm start?
So the farm's been here since 1924. So it would have been my great-grandparents moved here from Vizzy by horse and buggy back then.
That's cool.
And this is where they just kind of ended up.
Yeah.
It's actually the house where my uncle lived, just down the road, was the house that they were in. And then this house, my grandfather built.
Oh, really?
And so all the stand out here and whatnot came later. Originally, that wasn't here.
No kidding.
For a while.
The farm stand.
Yep.
So the little house down the road.
Yep, the next white house down the road there.
That was your uncle's.
Yep.
And your great-grandparents.
Yeah, that's where they moved into, and that's where my grandfather was raised up until he built this house. So
When was this built? Do you remember?
I want to say 50s.
Yep.
Yep. I don't exactly know.
Man, that's a long time.
Yep. When John passed, he was the one who had actually lived here the longest because it was where he was raised.
Oh,
It was his
interesting.
childhood home. So he was the one who had actually lived in this house the longest.
Born here, grew up here,
Yep.
and passed away here.
Yep.
And the whole time was farming.
Yep.
So going back, and stop me if I go off on tangents too and fill in.
No.
Back with the, so when your great-grandfather come over, horse and buggy,
Yep.
from VZ,
Yep.
and they settled in the home down the road, what did it look like around here? Because right now we have a big heavy pavement road they just paved the other day.
Yep.
And
No.
there's trees and...
Yeah, that didn't exist. I believe at one point, and I don't exactly know the dates, there used to be a trolley line that would come so far down. I don't
really?
exactly know how far.
Oh, that's...
But,
interesting.
yeah, because but predominantly then most people were still horse and buggy.
Sure.
You know, most people didn't have a car yet. I remember my grandfather would always say he would drive his teachers to work, and you know, he started driving at the age of 13 because when he first started driving, driver's license weren't a thing.
Sure.
As long as you could crank start the car,
Oh, that's funny.
you could drive.
Oh, that's cool. And
So-
driving his teachers to work.
Right,
Or
because
to
they were
school.
older and they couldn't get the car started, but he could. So,
Oh, that's cool.
yeah.
Was, I'm guessing the schoolhouse must have been right in downtown Hampden?
Yeah. So the old Hampden Academy.
Okay, yep.
For anyone that's familiar with that, there's the Bronco out front there, and then there's like
Yep.
a brick building.
Yep.
That was the school. That's where
Oh.
my grandfather went to school. That was the
Really?
whole thing. The buildings in behind it. No, that didn't exist at that point. It was just that one building.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that. So I moved down to Winterport maybe a decade ago. I've lived around Bangor most of my life, so there's a lot of Hampden. I'm probably more familiar with Winterport than I am Hampden,
Yeah.
but I never realized it was that old.
Yep.
That's cool. So where do you think the trolley line went to? Do you think it went like from Hampden into Bangor?
I think so, and I don't think it made it all the way to Winterport. I could be wrong on that though, but that's one of those more obscure facts of history that I don't.
Sure.
The big reason why I do know it existed is I have a photo. I think it's from. I'd have to check it. I think it's dated like 1914, and it has a picture of them plowing out the line for the trolley, and it was of Hampden here. It's like a shot of what the road would have been.
Can we take a look at that afterwards?
Yeah,
That's
for sure.
cool. Because that's like, I don't know when photography began, but that's right around that time when like you're starting to get photos and like,
Yep.
it's hard with around 1940. I don't know what, so trolley, so there had to have been some electricity.
Yep. They had some sort of electrical through here, I believe. So
Yeah, I'd like to take a look at that later on. That'd
Yeah.
be super cool. So what were they? So when they moved here, was it just because I'm guessing back then there was a lot more fields around. Like even today we're losing. But was this a field or was it wooded or?
Exactly what it was when they moved here, I'm not 100% sure, but
Yeah,
I know
yeah.
just like everywhere else at one point, because they were getting wood off of
Yeah.
it. So
Oh,
you
sure.
did have a lot more
Yeah.
land being opened up. So I know my grandfather remembers things. For him, it was a lot more open versus now it's much more wooded than what
Yeah.
they remember. So
Do you know what they were growing?
I think it was just a whole bunch of mixed vegetables, and I
Really?
think they had animals and whatnot
Yeah.
too. Kind
Yeah.
of because everyone still grew their own stuff then.
Yeah.
It wasn't so
Everyone had
you
a
had to
garden.
grow for yourself,
Yep.
and then you
First
did
and
some,
foremost.
yeah, to make sure you can make it through the winter, and then
I think people should get back to that.
Oh yeah,
I think it's even that first start was like you can grow for yourself and take care of them. That excess you have of one thing that you can build off of. It'd be nice to see that return to that in some ways.
yeah.
So how big is the property?
On this side, it's what is it, 24 acres altogether.
Mm-hmm.
But we now actively farm only about 4 acres of
Yep.
it for field crops,
Yep.
and then some of it's apple orchard, and then
Oh.
others it's just they're in the
Yep, it's
in
the wood
trees.
lot.
Yeah.
And you said this side of it?
Yeah, so my parents live on the other side of the road. So,
Oh, really?
Yep. So we have a little bit of property on the other side too, but
There used to be years ago a little another garden thing popped up with a hoop house. It was like that little short like perennial plant. It was only around like a year or two.
yep, that was the neighbors right across the road here.
So there is your folks farther down or up?
Farther next house down.
Oh, okay. Okay,
Yeah.
so right across the road then.
So
Is that where you're getting all the firewood from?
it's where I predominantly get a lot of it from now.
Yeah.
So
That's awesome. Yeah, it seems like it'd be tricky though getting across this main road.
yeah, that's the worst part of it. So I usually cut and split most of it over
Do
on
you?
that
Okay.
side and then throw it in the back of a truck and bring it over.
I
But,
haven't been down to your wood pile yet, but I thought I saw a tree length or wood, but maybe it's just the way it's stacked up or something.
What I've done lately to start has
Yep.
been from like the neighbors and
Oh, yeah,
whatnot.
yeah.
Actually, from
Yep.
all that windstorm that we
my
got last
gosh.
December.
Yeah, we get so
They
much of it.
know that we have a wood boiler.
Yeah.
So they were willing to bring some of the wood over. So, and they were able to bring it over tree length or
Oh, that's cool.
bigger sections. So
You ever get the tree guys dropping stuff off?
a few times.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
We usually we'll get them good for the wood chips.
Yep.
Like I love getting as many wood chips as I can, but sometimes they'll have gnarly knotted stuff they can't use, and they're just like they need a place to dump it because they just get so much.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's just like some softwood pine and junk, but it's like sometimes it's like some nice maple or ash in there, and it's like I'll take anything.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't matter what it is. I just want organic carbon matter all the time. So there's like no limit.
Yeah.
So I try to get them whenever they show up. So that, man, I just can't. I have a hard time trying to remember or think about what it might have been like 100 years ago, and 100 years of farming through here.
Yeah, and most of what I know is really more so from like the 70s on. 'Cause
Sure.
That's what I hear from like my parents and
Right.
my uncle. That was really when they were getting active in it.
Yeah.
So anything beforehand is just stories I've heard from my grandfather for the most part.
So your great grandfather, and then your grandfather, and your uncle,
Yeah.
and did your father and mother, are they farming?
Yeah. Yep, they help me. They're the other two still
Oh,
here. So
yeah.
the other guy that's usually out in the stand is my dad,
Yeah.
and then my mom.
Yeah.
She's not out at the stand as much. She's
Yep.
usually helping me more so down back and whatnot.
Oh, that's
So,
cool.
Yeah.
So has it always been, I guess, has it always been like a big family collaboration, or was it, like I know, like you said, why John was living here, did he just kind of like, did John take the reins and it was kind of like his farm and folks helped him out? Just
Yeah.
living here for so long.
Yeah, I mean, John was the one who took it over from his dad.
Yeah.
It was passed to him, and then my mom continued to help a little bit throughout that time, and his other sister Janice did too.
Yeah.
But they both did their own things too.
Oh, that's
so
cool.
It was definitely John's, and
Yeah.
then just
Gotcha.
that you get that family
Yeah.
just mentality of like you got to help, and
Yeah.
and that's just what they did. It just wasn't really question of whether or not. It was just, that was just what you did. So
It is, and it still continues on.
yep.
That's so. What was So it's been diversified vegetables, primarily first and foremost for yourself, but doing that like long term. Like it's been that way for quite a while.
Yeah.
Was there any animals or crops that like popped up over time, whereas like you just went heavy into pears for a while, or whatever? Was there anything like that that comes to mind, or has it always been kind of just
In the 70s and even before then, probably the 60s too. My grandfather loved laying hens, chickens.
Really?
Yep. So the building that's behind the stand, that was his chicken coop, his chicken house.
That's cool.
And so at one point he had over 2,000 laying hens.
Really?
Yep.
Holy smokes.
So, and that was, he loved doing that. And then at some point in the 70s, the price on eggs just went, well, the grain went real high.
Sure,
and the eggs didn't appreciate with them.
Yep.
So they had to get out of doing that because it wasn't making any money. It was costing money.
Probably need that. Is that around the time when all the big chicken barns came out?
He was right in with that boom, and then when all of them were going under, same time period. So
interesting.
But I know at one point we still have one of the old egg vendors that he had.
Oh, really?
And he had it down in Bangor.
Yeah.
I believe it was like right beyond like the police station
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. Oh, that's
And
cool.
so people, you used to be able to go to an egg vendor and put your coins in, and you get eggs.
Oh, an egg vendor. Oh, like
So
a vending
like
machine.
a soda machine, yeah.
Oh,
but for eggs.
I was thinking a vendor, like just somebody that buys them. And I was trying to think of who's down there.
No, he would just, it's just a unit, like, it looks like a soda machine kind of deal. And you could go and get eggs out of it. So it would keep them refrigerated. And
oh, oh my goodness. That sounds amazing.
And that was, but back in the 60s and whatnot. So,
yeah. Is that, and you still have one of those?
It's in rough shape.
It's in rough shape. Man, I'd like to take a look at that and check it out, just to see it. That's kind of, it must, like, I just can't imagine, like, must have something just like, because you couldn't have them too high, like, whatever you need so you don't crack them and break them.
It's one of those things, I've just known it. It's sat there my whole life, so I don't really know how they worked, but
we should get it running.
I think that might be more cost effective than what it's worth.
Just for the fun of it all, just like the novelty. If we cleaned it up and put it in the store out there, just for the cool factor. Man, I love like some folks will spend time restoring cars.
Yeah.
Let's put together an egg vending machine.
Yeah.
Anyway, winter's coming. We're gonna have some downtime.
Oh yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that the price of grain just continues to rise. It's the same thing everywhere. And I know, and I wonder that too, because I know there's that period of time when you had the big chicken barns, and you still see remnants of them, the barns themselves, everywhere.
And then my uncle, he liked apples. That was the big thing that he...
John.
Enjoyed doing. So when he took it over, he went big into apples for a little bit, and
And there's, just along the road driving by, you can see quite a few varieties. And behind us, I mean, are these all remnants from John's plantings?
These aren't anymore, unfortunately, because now we just don't have the crew to keep up with the orchard. So, and it's also another one of those things, just kind of like the eggs, the price point on them hasn't appreciated a whole lot over the years. So, hate to give it up, but we still have the trees, so...
but the trees are still there, though.
Trees are still there, so, if the price point comes back around and whatnot, could bring the trees back and...
Could you just charge more?
There's maybe. Can you charge more? Yes. Will people pay more? That's the question.
That's right.
So,
if that value's behind it, and you can say, like, they show the practices and see what goes into it, for sure. But then you're also limited on time, and you can only put time in so many places. Before it's like, oh, now I need more help, and it's one thing when you've got family that can help out, but once you have to hire people outside, and they have time and they have commitments and they have things going on in their life, it gets really tough to like get somebody on call all the time. And to be around. And available.
And the hard part with the apples is they're very heavy spray crop that needs a lot of fungicides, pesticides sprayed on them. So for cost and whatnot. It's,
Sure.
and just then having people that are qualified to do that.
And if you didn't have them, you'd probably have the cost of all the labor of doing non-spray, like probably much more heavily manually involved, I'm guessing, and your yields would potentially change a bit.
Yeah, and organic apples, it's hard to get good quality is
Yep.
the problem with them.
Yep.
And, part of it is I blame the grocery stores and that people now just expect a perfect looking apple.
Yeah, and year round.
Year round.
Yeah.
And that's the other problem with the apples compared to most of the other crops
Yep.
too, is that you can go to the grocery store in the middle of February and you can get a half decent tasting apple.
Yep.
But a lot of people tend to find, that cucumber's getting a little old, or that one out of Mexico wasn't real.
It's all of a sudden our local food supply is really a global food supply.
Yeah.
We're getting it from all these other countries just so that we have the illusion of abundance,
Yep.
like at all times.
Yep. And I know, like when he was first started doing it, because you didn't have the long-term storage or that you could get apples year round,
Yep.
people would be buying 2 or 3 bushels of apples a piece because, they'd make their sauce, they'd make their pies because they wanted to freeze it, can it, because you couldn't get it later on. That wasn't an option. So it was get it now while you can, while they're fresh.
Yep.
And everyone was keeping them. Whereas now, a half-peck bag
Yep.
that's a lot of apples.
Isn't that something?
Yeah.
That's a really good perspective on that too, because I know that,
Yeah.
but just hearing it again kind of drives that home.
Yeah.
Because we'll do the same sometimes the same thing, like you pick them up and you have them, or we'll put them into the crisper to try to keep them for a while. And it's like, I find I just go on waves of what I want to eat.
Yep.
And usually, like when it's berry season, I'm all over the berries.
Yep.
And then when I'm not, I'm kind of like we have like some jams and jellies of molasses, but I really don't eat them throughout the year. It's like those kind of windows when they're fresh and available. I love them. And then after that, it's like, yeah. So so now this is a half pack.
Yep.
Or do you sell these mostly or smaller ones, do you think?
That's the primary
common.
size that we
Yep.
sell for the most part.
What about because of that, and as much as I would like to see people just go back to eating within seasons, I'm still working on it. But overall, for the most part, it'd be nice to a direction towards more seasonal eating or preservation, like you're saying.
Yeah.
What about pressing it into cider?
Yeah. That too.
Yeah.
People still love the cider.
Yeah. I mean, are you guys pressing any?
We don't press the cider ourselves anymore, unfortunately. So.
Anymore, but you did.
Yeah, we did. Right up until I was in high school.
Really?
We used to do it. Yep.
Yeah. Well, how old are you now? Look, I'm going off on tangents already.
No, that's okay. I'm 29 now.
Oh, shit, really?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So up until, 10, 15 years ago, we were pressing our own cider because
No
that's we were still doing apples up until about that point.
Okay.
And that was kind of near the end of the apples for what we were doing. So
when you kind of ended apples, did everyone just kind of sit around and say, you know what, we're dropping apples next year? Or did it just kind of like phase out? You just started doing less and less and less?
it just became doing less and less, so it just kind of phased itself out. And I think it was partially because it was that we were realizing it wasn't worth the time for doing it.
Yep.
But like I said, my uncle loved doing it.
Sure.
It's what he enjoyed doing. So he was the one who was doing all the spraying and whatnot.
And
and
the
I
pruning.
think pruning. And I think part of that too was probably age was starting to catch up with him too. So he was realizing he just couldn't keep up with it as much as he needed to. And at that point I was going off to college and whatnot, so I wasn't doing it either. So
the trees are still there though.
Yep, trees are still there.
Probably getting gnarly.
Overgrown and whatnot, but yeah.
Well, what would it take to bring them back? If somebody came through and was like, you know what, some young individual that was like, I want to get into farming, was like, hey, you have this opportunity. What if just think hypothetically, like if somebody was like, hey, you have this orchard not being used. What if I maintain it and get up to took it over, basically taking care of it, and then could sell the apples and made a cut or however you worked it out. Basically, like someone kind of took over that because that was their love and their kind of step into farming.
Yeah.
Like, what would it take to bring the apples back, or could they be able to be brought back?
I think they could. You'd have to look at the trees, so it'd go per basis on tree, but some of them you might be able to get away with just doing like some heavy pruning on it. It would take a few years. The other thing you can do is, I know there's a method of you cut the trees back real hard, and then if you grafted new grafts onto it for those varieties to kind of bring them back, that might work as well. I've never actually tried it myself, but I have heard of it. And so for some of them, that might almost be quicker.
Sure.
But it would still, you're talking a multi-years.
Yeah. Get someone really into it. Someone really loving apples and fruits and hard.
Yeah. It's one of those things. The first year, I wouldn't expect much.
I found one out in the woods. It was probably just a deer apple. I don't know what it was, and it was all gnarly. This is when I first moved in, and I did whack it right to almost. It was probably like 3 feet off the ground, and for a couple of years I was trying to like trim it a little bit because the suckers just went crazy. And I haven't checked on. I think there's like a couple main branches that are up taller than me now. I haven't checked on for a couple of years. I probably should. But that was my thinking. I was like, oh, maybe I could just graft on whatever, and I kind of forgot about it. But I found that what I've seen, like in the woods, at least, the apple trees that have taken root, they're super rugged. Yeah. And it's like, but you may not, it's always one of those things that even if I cut it back, eventually it seems like the roots, like that mass, is gonna want to die back at some point. Yeah. Or like there'll be like a end of its shelf life, even if you cut it back and graft onto it. But man, when you hear about all these trees, the potential there, it's just a handful of years away to try to bring them back. It's like, it'd be nice to get out there and give them some life. But there's only so many hours in a day. It's just like the chicken coop. It's like, it's right there. We could bring that right back. It's so close.
Yeah, but just finding time.
Well, so where's the focus now then?
Still doing the mixed vegetables and whatnot, but it was really after the chickens kind of went bust. That's when we started getting into the greenhouses with the flowers and the seedlings and whatnot. It was my grandmother. She said, we'll try a few. And those sold well. It didn't take long to get rid of them. So then, we started doing more of that. And more, because that seemed to just be where the market was going for us. It was something, it was an easy sell because they were selling themselves kind of deal, so you weren't having to spend a lot of time marketing or driving around trying to sell them or something.
The light bulb was bright.
So right now that's, still one of our bigger components of what we do.
You have a lot of flowers. Like, I wish I had gotten some shots earlier, but like the whole front of the store and down the walkway and the arbor and trellis out here, like there's so many of them. Like year round, like from spring right until mums in the fall. Like it's just like there's always been a huge variety of them. How much does that make up the flowers versus the vegetables and sales? Like is it like half and half, you think, or is it like?
No, the flowers are definitely, they make up more of it than what the vegetables do.
No kidding.
The flowers, it's very much more seasonal though. Early spring, and then again in the fall with the mums. But midsummer, there's not a lot
that makes
for
sense.
That period. So that's kind of where the vegetables take over.
That's kind of when they're coming up then too, really, and filling in that niche. So, and I hear that a lot about flowers. It just never seems. Maybe it's I just never seem to think that they're going to sell, but I guess they do. People that sell flowers seem to have really great luck with them, and a lot of people want to. I don't know if I'd call it gardening. I guess it's gardening. Would almost rather have flowers over vegetables in a lot of ways. Maybe it's just that. Like I know my mom, she buys all kinds of things every spring. She's like filling the gardens up with like, I think she must have had like this huge bed full of nothing but marigolds this year. It was humongous. It was like she just loves them. So, that's awesome. That makes a lot of sense. That transition where it's like, well, this isn't working, or you're putting a whole bunch of effort into one or two enterprises that are really not panning out, and then you have another one where it's just like you don't even have to work at it, and they just sell. So how did you? Just a little bit of a backup. So how did you get started doing it? Because you kind of grew up doing it, sounds like.
Born and raised here. So my parents always say I was born in April. So and then that Halloween when they were picking pumpkins, I was throwing a fit in the back of the truck, so they brought me out and put a wooden apple bushel crate upside down, and I walked around that holding myself up at, what was that, 6 months old or so.
That's cool.
And then I was quiet after that. So I don't know, there was just something about it. I just always
around that up, but that's cool.
Yep. So
have you had, growing up, I'm sure you're probably over here often, or part of the farming, helping out in like the family's projects or family gardens or however it's set up. But did you have anything of like your own little enterprises starting out, or anything that stands out?
No, not really. I mean, like after college, I went and worked for a few different companies, but beyond that, that's it.
Yeah.
You know, so otherwise it's just been working.
Farm related?
The first one was, and then the second one wasn't. I always thought if I didn't do farming, I'd do forestry. So the second job was more forestry based.
Yep.
So
Yep. That'd be a good gig too. Did you guys have like a forest management plan or anything on the setup here?
I don't.
Yep.
No.
We started working the last few years with the NRCS and just like some crop tree release and a few different things here and looking at their different programs. And I'm not sure that working with the government is right for everyone. There's certainly a lot of paperwork and a lot of time is spent, but in other ways, like I've gotten some pretty good perspectives. And working with the forester has been good.
Yeah.
And how it can kind of mesh, because raising pigs, I kind of want a system where I have trees, but also semi-grassy pastures intermingled with it, where the animals can go out on that kind of pasture.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like managing for wildlife and animals with farming, and probably probably firewood, but like a commercial timber harvest is probably like lowest on my list, whereas other people want something different. So it's been pretty eye-opening working with the government and trying those programs out from a forest management kind of perspective.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I mean, for the most part, I'm happy with how our trees have worked out, and I feel for the most part with we've gotten a few of those bad windstorms in recent years. So it's just been a while of that. Okay, they've gotten blown over. They're in the field. Yep. Guess what? They're going to get picked up.
Absolutely,
it's not a choice. So.
Now, do you have many fields down there?
Yep. And so last year, with that windstorm, I had a whole bunch of red pine that fell into the garden. So that was where I was getting most of my firewood from, because I needed to get it out of the field one way or another. So
now, fields, you got crops in them.
Yep.
But do you have fields like pastures?
I have more so that on the other side of the road, but we don't.
On your parents?
Yeah, on my parents, but we don't hay it or anything.
Okay.
We've just kept it as open pasture, just so that it doesn't go back into tree growth kind of deal.
Do you ever hit it like a bush hog it or anything? Just
try and do it every year, but sometimes it's every couple of years.
Sure. As long as you keep them knocked back once in a while.
Yeah.
That's been kind of become my entire philosophy on mowing lawns.
Yeah.
Because I hate mowing. And the cost of gas and the maintenance, and I kind of did a rant on it the other day, and I've ranted to a lot of people about how absurd it is. And realistically, my lawnmower broke. So I was like, well, the hell with it, I'm done. And I've just let it go. And even my yards, there's like so many flowers and so many crickets and grasshoppers and frogs and our bird population. It's like, oh, why would I even want to mow? But after a couple of years, the raspberries start coming up. And I start getting little saplings popping up. So usually I'll bush hog my trails and the property kind of once a year.
Yeah.
This year I picked up a scythe.
Oh, yeah.
A scythe. And so I just got it like a month ago. So I haven't had a chance to go really play with it. I'm thinking this year is like just for like some walkways and a few spots, like small area though, not like a big field. So I'm not going to. Now, are you guys bush hogging it, or do you have a tractor?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Yep, we bush hog it ourselves. So. Yep.
Was anyone in the family doing any haying?
No, not as of recently anyways. If we have, it's been a long time since we've done it. So
I see a lot of guys that are haying pretty much. That's the equipment they have.
Yeah.
They either have livestock or they're doing just hay and cutting for people.
Yeah.
And even now I've seen since I've been in Winterport, the last decade, more and more pasture fields being divided off for homes or solar farms.
Yeah.
And that whole agricultural land just being taken out of production.
Yep.
And it's kind of sad to see it all going.
Yeah. Foster Ave, just down the road
Foster
here.
Is yeah, a little subdivision down there?
Yeah, the development down there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that used to be farm. That was all pasture land.
Wow.
So I remember as a kid,
Wow,
there were
yeah.
hay bales out there, the big round hay bales and whatnot.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
walk down there, and it's also where you would go skiing or snowmobiling, because that was just one big open field. So it was, there were tons of snowmobilers that would just go down in there. But now it's all housing. So.
How long ago did that come in? Remember?
Oh God. I want to say it's not too old, 15 years or so, maybe.
Yeah.
Not terribly old. So
It goes quick.
it does.
Down on a Lebanon Road on 69 in Winterport, there's these great big fields across from the Thibodeaux, and the geese land out in them. These huge, and just I don't think anything's sold yet, but the signs are out there now, and I don't know who's haying it because there's just less people farming too, so there's less people like using it, and like they start getting. I guess the homeowner can decide to, if they can't get enough from whoever's haying it, that it makes more sense economically just to sell it for development.
Yeah.
But then at some point, like we need to have hay for animals.
Yeah.
Like beef is a big one. And if not, then it just consolidates the farms that are around. Like I think in Winterport, there's only like half a dozen farms.
Yeah.
Like, and I don't know in Hampden. Of course, not in town, but the farther you go, I bet it's the same thing. Half a dozen to a dozen farms, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
And there's a lot that are doing it themselves, self-sufficiency, or they might stick out. I seen this lady down the road, or somebody down the road, and that seemed to, I think in the same subdivision, had a little wooden stand up for eggs.
Yeah.
And a cooler in it. And I seen it one day, and I don't know, I think it was a couple days ago. We drove by, and it was blown over. So like little setups, so they're like hanging a shingle basically, not necessarily trying to make a living year round on it.
Yeah.
So what are the plans? Think about that, like making a living going forward. So what are your plans for the future? Because you've taken over now.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. That is correct.
So just...
Yeah.
Well, before we go there, so how did that happen then? Like, was it just a natural... Because how'd that go?
For here, transitions, they don't really happen until death for the most part. So, but yeah, I'm just the next generation for it. Otherwise, the other ones who would be interested in it would be my parents. But,
But they didn't want to take over? Or
my mom wasn't necessarily like opposed to taking over, but it was that, why go through all that twice if it's still just going to end up going to me kind of deal.
Sure. So, that makes sense.
Especially because they're in their 60s, so really more of a retirement age of, you know. So instead of having to go through it all and then in another 5-10 years going through it all again.
Much better for you to take the reins and then they can assist and help out however. That makes sense. For sure. So there's been, because you were working with John previously, pretty much like in the same kind of capacity, just helping him out with everything. And so how's this last year been?
It's been good. So, tried to, first year, not really changing a heck of a whole lot, Most of it right now is still just kind of maintenance, upkeep, trying to update stuff because I just have stuff that's at the point of needing to be replaced. So, kind of just starting with that and then seeing where things go from there. And it's just a weird time too because COVID changed everything so much.
Oh, sure.
For how things were and how things are now. Before COVID, there was definitely, online was getting a bigger presence, but COVID really put that front and center for how business was done.
Did you see, did that change how you guys are doing stuff?
Not for us. Okay. Just because for our scale. Trying to do, at the start of COVID, we were like, we could do phone orders and whatnot, and we tried doing that very briefly, and we were like, oh my God, we're going to need to double the size of the crew if we're going to do this. And it was like, that's not working for us. And part of it is you got to do what you like.
Right.
So,
Yep.
Because my mom and I, we've talked about it before, and we're like, the ag tourism, love people are looking for something to do on the weekend, and we're like, and we know, we could do that. We've got the location for it.
Yep.
But both of us were like,
Time.
it's time, and we're like, it doesn't sound fun to us.
I feel that.
And we look at it and we're like, that's a headache. That's another headache.
Yep.
No, thank you.
Yeah.
So
it's that same way, like, and I won't go too far off that, but like, I'm very much, in many ways, a super big introvert.
Yeah.
But like when I go to market and like people are showing up that appreciate what you're doing, it's a different energy, and you're like, oh, I love talking to people.
Yeah.
Or like when I come to interviews, I'm like, oh, this is great. I'm just like, talk to my friends. It's like no big deal at all.
Yeah.
But then in other situations, you're like, oh, I would want to avoid all that too. Like it
Yeah.
sounds, you're like, no way. Having to host a big party and do all that, like, oh, that sounds gross.
Yeah.
Be like,
No,
context.
I feel for the most part, most of your farmers are kind of more of an introvert. So that's
Yeah. A lot of them just want to work in the soil or with the animals and be left alone. And for sure. And I'm very much a technician at heart.
Yeah.
And I just want to go work. And so sometimes it's taken on quite a bit for me, like with the filming and stuff. I've had enough positive reinforcement where like I've done enough of them where somebody gets something out of it, like somebody I wouldn't have met, and they're like, "Hey, that was super good," or like I learned this much, and I can like, it's like, oh, it's so. I just try to put myself out of it and be like, well, you know what? Maybe there'll be something good about this that will affect somebody that I wouldn't have got to otherwise. So it's worth checking out. And it's still just talk about farming all day, so I like it. So you guys, and part of it too, I'm sure, like now that we're hitting winter, taking the next year to kind of reflect on how the season was, and but not change anything too dramatically. But agritourism's out.
Yeah,
for now.
Not for me anyways. It's not for me. So, nothing too, like, I don't have any like grand, like, this is where we're going to head with it or anything.
Yeah, like finally I can raise peaches.
Yeah, I don't have anything like that planned.
We're getting pigs.
Yeah, so, no, just kind of being open to it all, because adaptability is, it was chickens, and then it was apples. You got to just kind of be aware of seeing what do people want, where is it going, and what can we do. So,
and that can be like things you want to do product wise, and then your distribution channels, like trying to do things online. And like you mentioned the phone orders and that issue, and like we had a bunch of online orders and everything spiked, and it was a lot of fear buying.
Yeah,
people were worried, so they were buying a bunch, but they were just like, there was a lot of fly-by-night customers. And so like it seemed really good, and we started ramping up production, and then it's like, well, where are they now? And some would stick around, and some are still with us. We've had folks with us for years. But we saw this big spike in just random people that would show up and then just like disappear, like once they weren't scared any longer. You're like, oh, okay, well that's not really what I want. I'd rather have those long-term customers that are supporting what we're doing and trying to keep things going. It's like it's a different avenue in those different channels, and you really kind of devote a certain amount of time to it.
Yeah.
Or whatever online presence there is. I think do you guys do something, Facebook maybe?
Yeah, we have a Facebook page.
Okay. And I don't really use Facebook. I have one, but I hardly ever use it. Any plans for any of that kind of stuff? Marketing wise, I guess I should say.
Right now, I'm just keeping with the Facebook page.
Yep.
That's enough to try and keep up with, I find.
But nothing standing out as far as enterprise you've just been dying to do?
No, not really.
That's cool.
Yep. I like what I do right now for the most part. So
the
seasonality of it all is always nice. So,
yeah. This is my first year without pigs in like just over a decade probably, and it's because we put everything in the freezer this past spring, and I stopped breeding.
Yeah.
So I don't have any boars, no sows, and the freezer's been pretty full. And I've kind of dropped some markets. And it's like, oh, I have this time off. I can go hunting. Like I have time. I can actually go see other farms now.
Yeah.
And it's like this winter. Usually winter is my slow time anyway, where I'm going over last year's financials and records and thinking about what worked and where I want to go next and what I want to try, and doing a lot more of my planning. And this year it's like I feel like I just have more time for it. It's like, I'm
Yeah.
almost ready for the holidays to be over, to sink into the middle of winter and let everything just kind of like,
Yeah.
close. That's probably my favorite aspect of working outside, working on the farm, is just that seasonality of it all.
Yeah.
You know Tom Roberts from Snakeroot Organic Farm?
Don't.
I'll send you a video later. maybe I'll put on the video. I'll link it. But he had a fella go out to his farm and do like a little mini documentary, like 5 minutes. And he was talking about the pace of life and just how he had to get used to, when he started farming life, getting used to that pace of like, it's not like a time signature, just like whatever needs. It's like make hay when the sun shines.
Yeah.
Like this is just what has to get done.
Yeah.
The times you're not doing much or just observe, like the whole kind of, just put together nicely. I'll send a copy of it to you later. It's just a nice little video.
Yeah.
That same idea, that same sentiment. Yeah, it's super cool.
Yeah. No, I always tell all my friends and whatnot with the farming, it's kind of like that. You always have something to do. There's always something that needs to be done, but there's definitely more of a down period in the winter time because there's less daylight.
Yep.
You know, there's so much of it that you just, it's daylight driven. And I'm like, what if you were offered a job where, okay, you don't have to go into work until 2 hours after sunrise, but you're going to work until 2 hours before sunset.
That's right.
You know, great in the winter because you only have to work, 7 to 2.
Yeah.
But in the summer, you're going to be up 6 to, 7 working. And they're like, oh, yeah, no.
I like it. It's boom or bust.
Yeah.
It's very much an entrepreneurial spirit, because you're just like, you know what, sometimes I'm flush and sometimes I'm broke.
Yeah.
And there's something to be said for, I know I have friends that love working for somebody else because work stays at work.
Yeah.
And home stays at home. And they have that security of, they can expect a paycheck. They can, there's certain things, there's some level of expectation and security, but you're always beholden to what the boss says.
Yeah.
Right. Or like what's like the market, they just, things happen, all of a sudden COVID, like we're not selling things, we don't need people, now you're fired.
Yeah.
And I just prefer figuring things out.
Yeah.
And farm, it's just like that entrepreneurial, just like figuring out whatever I need to do. And sometimes I'm super flush and sometimes I'm super broke.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's just like I'm heading west to go gold panning.
Yeah.
I'm like just striking it. Like just, I don't know, it's that exploration and adventure behind it.
Oh, yeah. And there are some days you're like, oh, dang, I wish I could blame the other coworker, but I have no one but me to blame for the situation I'm in right now.
Some days, and when things break and it gets over, there's those days and it's like, But then you get that big down period. Like in the winter, I do a lot of reading then. I'm like a lot of hanging out. It's like, even when I have the animals, they're like, at least the pigs are kind of like us, that like, if it's cold out, they want to stay inside and sleep.
Yep.
You just get those things, you're like, all the trees have like sent all their sap into the roots and they're just chilling. They're like, it's downtime.
Yeah.
We should be taking downtime. I think it's just good for us. Overall, spiritually and mentally and physically. Yeah, it's good to have those breaks.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. So now you guys used to do wreaths.
Yep.
Wreaths are done?
Yeah, I'll do them by order.
Oh, yep.
If people call and place an order, but we're not open per se, because I'm pretty much the only one that makes them now.
Sure.
So, whereas it used to be my uncle and my mom and my aunt, so you'd have a few more people that would be making them. But now with just me,
I get it.
It's too much. I don't want to have to make that many. And part of our problem too is the areas where I was getting fur, they seem to be kind of dying out. So trying to get the tips is harder now. So.
Yeah, especially when you get to start bringing all that stuff in and
Yeah, so.
What do you think it's kind of like maybe a big question, but what do you think the future of small farms are? They're trying to keep it going.
I feel like that's a complex question.
It was on purpose.
Yeah. I think a lot of it will depend on areas, on where you are. And what you want to do with it exactly. I think there will always be a need for some. But I feel your smaller towns, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how things play out over the next 10 to 20 years, I'd say. Because you got COVID definitely changed things around in that during COVID, we had a surge of people that got back into gardening.
Yeah, yep.
Because they had nothing else to do, because there was nothing else going on. Now that things are, I would say, back to normal, you have a few that enjoyed it, but most of them they're like, no, I want to do my vacations, or they're like, oh my God, that was a lot of work for my 3 peppers that I got for the whole season.
Yep.
So you got some new people from that, but you also solidified some people of like, yeah, that's not worth my time anymore.
Sure.
And I think the other big thing is seeing how much climate change impacts people for growing conditions too. Just, I mean, you look at our November now.
Yeah, it's pretty warm.
Yeah, it's been fairly warm. It's not. And I actually just got heating oil yesterday for our greenhouses.
Yep.
And it's the least amount of oil we've ever gone through this last spring.
No
kidding. And it
kidding.
was a warm spring. I remember, we were like, oh my God, it's hot.
Yeah, I think
So.
I let my pigs out in like March when the ground was frozen. Within like 2 weeks, it was thawed.
Yeah.
And there was a muck hole. I'm like, oh my gosh, this should be like May.
Yeah. And that's so, you're getting it's a change of seasonality for us almost. So, and supposedly that's supposed to continue, depending on what research you follow and whatnot. But if it does, that will change how things are. So I'm not exactly sure. I hope it's bright and good, obviously.
I like that. All right, I'm there with you on that one.
But it's a complex.
Yeah, and you can't see the future.
No.
But I kind of think, like, well, you guys, how close are you to the center of, I was going to say the city of Hampden, but definitely the commercialized, built-up portion. I mean, you've got to be like 2 miles. Like you're pretty.
Yeah.
Like you're not. You're could you foresee a day when Hampden continues to expand and just you find the farm engulfed by subdivisions and businesses and being like this little farm oasis in the middle of a quasi city?
It's definitely plausible. For sure. Because I mean, just the 2 developments that we have here now that. We just never thought would be here.
Yeah.
I don't think it's that crazy of an idea.
Yep. I wonder that too, especially maybe part of my question when I asked it too, because I've been thinking about that, like as we lose like the fields and stuff, unless people are farming as a occupation, that means there's a consolidation of our food sources in the hands of a few people.
Yeah.
And like there's this continual expansion of building, construction, and people, but not necessarily an expansion of more farms.
Yeah.
And it's like at a certain point, if people want to get into it, it gets harder and harder and harder, but also harder for us small farms and medium-sized farms like to try to make a go at it because all that consolidation in those big industries, their scale makes that price. Like you're talking about, like the grocery store is one of the worst things for the apples. The chasm between what it costs at a small scale as like an agrarian small scale farm versus like a highly industrialized, mechanized, vertically integrated system is like a huge chasm.
Yeah.
Like the cost like between production is it's hard to wrap your head around. And I'm just wondering if that's going to be the continued trajectory. Like, at what point is it like, oh, that can't sustain itself?
Yeah.
Or people are so inundated with like, oh, I can just get apples for 10 cents a piece now.
Yeah.
Like, there's a certain point where it's like, that's like, it just seems like unreasonable and unsustainable to me.
Yeah, I know they classify, I believe, if you're a small farm, if you're 50 acres or less in production.
Yeah.
A medium-sized farm is anywhere from 50 to 500 acres.
Okay.
And a large farm is anything above 500 acres.
That's interesting.
Yeah, that's just how nationwide what they categorize farm size by.
Yeah.
So when you're talking small farm, in my head, that's 50 acres or under. It's just the standard that I've used.
Gotcha.
And I remember when I was in college, and what they were finding is the farms that were struggling the most were your medium-sized farms.
Okay.
and because they did have what you were just talking about. It was they couldn't produce enough to get that cheap cost, but
Yep. But
they were stuck in that middle, and what was happening to them is they'd go under, and the larger farms were then buying them.
Right.
So they were getting that acreage to add to their production.
Because for them it's cheap. Right, that makes sense too. Because as soon as you try to scale up, like I've run into this problem with the farm with the animals. Like, okay, well, if I want to scale up pigs, there's the cost of goods like the feed and the piglets and the bedding and the butchering.
Yeah.
Those all go up regardless how many I have. But now I need like more storage. Now I need more freezers, and now I need a bigger barn to store. Like the infrastructure goes up as well. And so there's like jumps you have to make and like commitments that are like put you in debt. And then you're like, okay, well, now that I've taken on this debt, in order to repay it, I have to produce a certain volume.
Yeah.
But now that this volume increases, now I need more labor.
Yeah.
And like this becomes this perpetual wheel, like of just growth for growth's sake, just to try to keep your head above water.
Yeah.
And it seems, I think that's led a bit to kind of backing off, at least for me, to kind of take a couple of years to do this and think about it, is that it just seems unsustainable and untenable, at least given my constraints.
Yeah.
You know, because it's really just me doing it.
Yeah.
So I can, and I've got 2 people that help out on the farm, and sometimes my mom will help and my boy, but like it's still kind of like to really kind of scale up more.
Yeah.
There's like hurdles to jump quite a bit.
Yeah.
And it's like I know it's not just my farm.
Yeah.
So think about those problems.
Yeah, I think it's, and your small farms, if they're trying to scale up, I think they will definitely struggle the most. But if you can find kind of that medium of like what you like and what you enjoy, and that's enough for you, and it's, can pay the bills and whatnot, I think those are going to be your farms that will definitely stick around for a much longer period. But a lot of it also comes down to, does the customer base care about where their food is coming from, and are they willing to stop for the food, like for us at the roadside market or a farmer's market, or do we just want to add it to cart on my Hannaford, when they're getting groceries, because I gotta go there for the other stuff anyways. So
Convenience.
Right.
Convenience
a lot of
sells.
it now, comes down to convenience for people.
And and I'll say, I think I just had a discussion the other day with my buddy Garrett. We were discussing convenience. And I've said jokingly for a long time, like, it's all been downhill since we harnessed fire. There's always been this push, like, as soon as we harness fire, like, there's always this next step of, like, okay, how do we make life better for the future? And it's always, like, one step. It's always, like, this urge, like, oh, let's improve one little thing. It just keeps improving. And we're at this point now where, like, we have such amazing abundance and technology. Yeah. I mean, I'm filming you on it's just, like, it's kind of crazy, like, but wait a minute, like, and now we're looking at genetically modifying things.
Yeah.
People potentially moving to Mars. Who knows? Like, it's just like, it seems like we just keep pushing to the point of, like, there's no real end game. It's just like, just keep pushing the envelope.
Yeah.
And people just become more and more accustomed to being like having convenience at all times.
Yeah.
That also any inconvenience is almost like, I don't know, an atrocity in a way.
And it's just, what do you get brought up with too?
True.
Now it's pretty standard. You expect to get a package from Amazon in 2 days.
Well, yeah.
And if you don't, it's like, oh my God,
that's
why isn't it here yet?
Yeah.
For my grandfather, in his lifetime, the greatest thing he thought, spray paint.
Right?
Because when he was a kid, didn't exist. So he thought that you could take a can of paint with you anywhere and spray it.
Yeah.
Was amazing.
Yeah, absolutely.
You
right?
You didn't need a paintbrush and a gallon of paint and drag all that around.
We take it for granted.
Yeah.
Like, this only dries and, like, I have to wait an hour for this to cure. Like, what the hell?
Yeah.
Like, whatever it is.
So,
like, it's not, so I just worry sometimes that, like, because every time that we choose convenience, we're giving up some self-sufficiency. Yeah. Because what you're doing is you're outsourcing that convenience away, and you're outsourcing that responsibility for production yourself. And you can't do everything.
No.
And that's like, we've had, our homes and our families and our tribes and our neighbors and our cultures and all this groups and stuff. So you can't do everything under the sun. But there's a certain point where, like, it just feels like we're accelerating so quickly towards just giving up more and more of our responsibility for things, like food being one of them for sure. I can't foresee the future anyway, but it just seems like a trajectory of like just giving up more and more to the altar of technology and not maintaining those skills and doing them ourselves.
Yeah.
And it's kind of worrying. Maybe I'm just pessimistic. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it depends on who you talk to, and
Yep.
you know, because you'll find some that, yeah, you're absolutely right, but then there are others that are still, you know, they want to make their own food and do
that's
that.
true.
So,
And that reminds me too, before you go off too far, or before we get going too far, you were talking about climate change and people getting back into farming from COVID.
yeah,
And so one thing that's been really popular for you in the evolution of the last 100 years of this farm is that you found like the flowers.
yeah,
And that's really, in a lot of ways, you're providing a DIY service.
yeah,
Because you're like, here's the plant, but then they're going to go off and, you know, they're not really, like the apples are, it's a finished product, you just eat
Yeah.
it. Or you can make something with it. But with the flowers, it's like people are putting into their flower beds, they're arranging it, they're doing all this stuff. Have you ever thought about looking into seeds? Because another variation on that, like if you're providing
Right.
seeds for people to continue to do it themselves.
So like sowing the seeds and whatnot.
Yeah. Maybe
I-
even the propagation of them, like developing them.
Yeah, that's a tricky area now, I feel, with all the legalities of stuff, of just for like a lot of the flowers and whatnot. There's some of that stuff, because we get it as plugs. I'm
Oh, okay.
technically not allowed to take a propagation from that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's illegal to do it.
Oh, my goodness.
And same thing with some of your, like the GMO seeds.
Right.
You know, it's a patent
Yeah.
variety
Right,
that
right.
you're not allowed to
Isn't
do
that weird?
anything with. So, which I think that's a lot harder for the older folks who, you know,
Right.
that wasn't a thing. That
Yeah.
became a thing in the 90s. That,
Right.
that passed.
Yep.
And that completely changed the whole landscape of how
Yep.
it's done and what you're allowed to do. Is,
See, that's where I have a problem, like with what I'm allowed to do.
Yeah.
Like I'm very liberty focused. And this idea that like a company can tell me because once you've planted it in the ground, I know there is that, but I disagree with it.
Yeah.
I don't think that's right, and that the company should have that much power over me once I plant it, because then you become beholden to them. And it's like, okay, well, if I do propagate it, they can either threaten me with, you know, fines or whatever, but,
Yeah.
but they have some leverage on me.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, it's out of your hands. Like once it's grown once, like in my view, like nature's now taking its course.
Yeah.
Like I should be able to do whatever I want with it.
Yeah.
And the whole idea behind it, because then it's like, well, if you can patent that, then you could patent life in general. And that seems like you're just trying to control nature at a level that does not make any sense to me at all.
Yeah.
Because nature just like abhors a vacuum and finds a way to move around things. You're like, it just doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah. But it's one of those agree, disagree with it. That's
Yeah.
just where things are with it. So that one, I feel it would be a lot harder to do. Like, if you're going to do the seeds, you become a seed company, kind of, you know, you go big time into it.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I guess, yeah, that's what I was like, or if you had like a little stand out there with all the seeds on it so people could buy their, just think along that DIY route and that transition over time, like maybe we can't help everybody, but like the flowers, you're selling them for folks to do their own thing. If you're helping to facilitate folks that do want to keep practicing themselves, and maybe they're not small scale full-time farmers, but they're homesteaders, preppers, they're just kind of doing their own thing. It's like, oh, here's a variety of seeds that you could use. Maybe they're all open pollinated varieties.
Yeah.
And it's like you can kind of do whatever you want with them. Everyone
Yeah.
can develop their own stuff. And then there's also that security, like you have it. Nobody owns you now. You have your own food security.
yeah.
That's, yeah.
So, and I mean, I do see some people that is a huge concern for
Yeah.
them. So, you know, they do focus on that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But then there's a whole nother group that is completely unaware of it. So,
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah.
Isn't that something?
Yeah.
Yeah, because, and two things. One, obviously the time, and I think you are correct also in that, like, if you went down that rabbit hole of breeding seriously, now it's like you got to give up some time because you're really maintaining these crops and making sure that, you know, they're not being cross-pollinated, and like, so there's a bit of time for that.
Yeah.
For sure, like that time commitment, which maybe nobody cares about. Yeah, maybe a few do.
A few do. And even I know for some of the bigger seeds, a lot of them are outsourced to other countries because the labor's cheaper.
Oh, sure.
There's not too many seeds that are actually grown here in America and
really?
for resale, just because the labor costs so much more.
That's interesting. So most of my seeds in the last several years I get either from Johnny's or Fedco.
Yep.
And a lot of them are grown New England or especially, I don't know, about Maine predominantly. And beyond that, I'm not familiar with many other catalogs really.
Yep.
So I don't even, but I guess, especially when you scale up, like if you need hundreds and hundreds of seeds, I guess you have to have a big enough supplier to handle all that stuff. So that's crazy that most of our seeds, can you say that again? Most of our seeds are coming from other countries?
Yeah, so their source for, it might be that it's an American-based company that's selling it, but where that seed is actually grown and produced for them to then sell is actually grown in a different country where the labor force is cheaper.
Even our seeds are not made in America.
Some are. You get some, but yeah, if you can't, and not all of them say, but if you look into it, if you look at source, and usually it's...
I'm going to have to take a look from now on, because I've only really just bought from them too, and I haven't really been familiar with any others, but that's kind of a crazy concept. They're like, oh man, not like when COVID hit and couldn't get supplies for everything because we've like outsourced all our manufacturing overseas. And it's like, oh, the U.S. isn't self-sufficient at all. Like our energy comes from overseas, and all of our everything that could be manufactured pretty much comes from overseas, and it's like, oh, even our seeds for producing food to survive on are overseas. Like, all it would take is like, man, that just seems precarious.
Yeah. I think part of it, if you're going to start seeing a lot of real change, kind of talking about the small farms and whatnot, if they're going to succeed and whatnot, is just a basic mentality on the consumer level of they're okay with spending more for fresh food and whatnot. Because I remember one of the classes I took, the big thing that we talked about was if you look at gross income for a family on average and what they're spending on food. Food's a big expense for most people. I'm sure you complain about your grocery bill just as much as I do. But
not my part. Well, unless I'm never mind. Unless I'm buying grain, it's like never mind.
But on a whole, us for America, we spend the least amount of our income on food compared to any other country. So I think we spend somewhere, I think it's like 20 to 25% of our income roughly on food. You go over to Europe, it's 40%. So
it's what you value.
Because
then it's like, where's that other 75% go? It's like, because it goes someplace.
Like for us, I feel, I don't exactly know, but I guess it's more so entertainment. We want to watch Netflix and whatever streaming services, or you want to be able to go take your vacation. And,
I think people find the resources for the things they want. Like there's a period, like when I was before the military, where like, like I feel like when I was at my I don't want to say the lowest, but when I was doing a lot of partying, and like I felt like I was working just dumb jobs before, and it'd be broke all the time, but somehow I'd always find money for drinks or cigarettes. You're like just a couple bucks to keep the car going. Like there's always like you find a way for the things that you value. Like even when you have nothing. And it's like I feel like people just it comes down just like what do they value more versus other things.
And another thing that I found interesting too, Europe's a great, like if you're looking for pro-organic and whatnot, Europe is a great place to look at it because they have just been there for a while too. So if you are looking...
a long time farming through there.
Farming there. So if you're looking at something that you're talking sustainability, they've figured that out a little bit anyways, but I was fortunate enough to have an exchange student in college that was in that class when we were talking about food and percentage and whatnot, and she was from Europe. I can't remember where. But she said one of the most interesting things to her that we have here in America is cafeterias, these big mess halls. They don't have that over there.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they don't have just these big areas that everyone goes and has
Like
lunch.
a big buffet.
Yeah, you know, and whereas for us that's standard in school. You know, okay, it's lunchtime. You're in the cafeteria for lunch.
Yeah. What do they have?
They just, as far as I could understand, it's kind of they just went outside and whatnot, or you know, it wasn't a huge like. I don't exactly know.
More like a little shop, and then you just go eat outside. I was thinking, what if maybe they had like the ingredients available, and then you just cooked it up there or something. Huh.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure what
curious.
they had, but for her, she found that a very foreign concept.
Huh.
So,
is that? I wonder. That's interesting. I think I've heard something like that before. Just as there's differences, smaller, more frequent meals.
Yeah.
And also much more leisure wrapped around meals. I've heard that a lot. Whereas, I don't know, as a generalization in the U.S., if it's more of like bigger, quicker, faster. It's more of like food becomes a fuel.
Yeah.
Less of like an experience of sitting around. Like I was just reading this book recently. I'm actually reading a book all about the history of agriculture from the Neolithic period up till now. And somewhere there was a talk about some stuff going on in Spain. You know, and they have their 2-hour siesta and their time to go home. Everyone like leaves work or leaves school to go home for 2 hours and have a big lunch together and then a nice nap. And then they go back to doing their stuff for the afternoon. It's like, it'd be so nice to just chill out for 2 hours in the middle of the day. Yeah. And like where it's close enough where like the school's close enough, work's close enough where like, you could just get back home with 2 hours. You're not traveling half an hour, an hour away to get to work or school. And it's like, cool. It's like a village, like that smaller...
Your small town kind of. And I think, we seem to always be moving away from that, it seems almost. Because, I mean, I'm just thinking even for like the high school here, my parents, they're like, at lunch, if you wanted to zip home, you could.
Right.
The new high school, you go in, those doors are locked at 8.
Yeah.
And if you go out, you're not getting back in.
Yeah, that's something.
So, you're in for the day. So.
Yes, this like what I was thinking earlier, like we're so close to, like, I wonder if the town's just going to engulf, and then, because if it's engulfing your farm, eventually it's going to make it to mine. Yeah. Like there's a certain point, like, I don't know, maybe when I have grandkids, it's going to be a whole different world that they're looking at. Yeah. And so I don't know.
The other side of that is to argue, though, if there's more houses, there should be more people, so you have more people that you can sell to.
That's interesting.
Yep. So it's a double-sided coin. It's just
that's true.
Trying to maximize on it. So
I like what you're doing. I'd have to think about that too, because I don't know. It's like two different worlds. Yeah. And I think that so like part of the podcast that I was working on was just the farm doing stuff, but also like moving to Agrarian Matters was just, there's a sense where there's a time period where working close to the land, human-powered, animal-powered, some machinery, like there's a point where there's like still like a community and a family connection, and there's a scale that seems like intuitively seems really appropriate in my mind. I don't know where that level is, because we have things in our modern convenience today, like running water, this technology to film, like there's some things for tools that are really amazing that really wouldn't have come about unless we had such innovation over time. Yeah. But it's almost like, I don't know, maybe just wanting to halt the brakes a little, push the brakes a bit, being like, I don't know, I think we're just like missing something by this constant acceleration of convenience and technology and expanding all the time, that I'm like, I don't know. So yeah, it's a good point that more people is more customers. But I don't know. I feel like something's being lost along the way, and I'm not sure what it is yet. Yeah, it's that. And I think it's a mentality thing of just trying to get people back into, go and buy your fruits and vegetables and meat from a local vendor instead of like, you just go to the grocery store for that. I think you're right. And I think you're right too, where you mentioned earlier about, especially trying to encourage people to do it themselves. Yeah. Or to have like their hands, like if they're planting flowers, that's like a step. It's like steps. Yeah. It's like you don't have to like quit your day job and like, go start your own farm, but it's like these little steps, and the more you get exposure to it, the better off it is.
Yeah.
So the flowers is a great one. It's like a gateway drug.
Yeah.
Now you're into the soil. And then if you had like a rack with some peas and like little things instead, before you know it, all of a sudden they've got chickens too. And they're like, hey, Ben, can you want to sell our eggs for us?
And I think, what I'd really love to see is anyone who has kids, if they can do vegetables, just so that the kids have some idea where food comes from.
I love that.
Is huge, because, for anyone that has grown up on a farm, if you then come across the teenager that doesn't know the carrot came out of the ground, you're like, how do you not know this?
I got one for you. Okay, it's sort of like agritourism, but it's for schools.
Yeah.
And only doing farm tours for schools. There's an option.
Yeah.
You could have like do like 4 a year or whatever.
Yeah.
And like they're already scheduled out, and you're basically gonna do like a tour, because the kids ask the best questions.
No.
They're like massively curious. They're just like, whoa, what is this? It's a worm. Don't eat it. Like,
Yes.
it's like, but it's just
Spit that out.
That's right. Taste this instead. This is an apple. Here's a carrot.
Yeah.
Yeah. That, I feel like that would be maybe your transition into other forms, but maybe if not, like, I don't know. I feel like this would be really well suited, this area. We had during COVID, there's been a lot of people that have also there's been a definite contingency of people that have started opting out of the system and have done more homeschooling or hybrid schooling, and they're doing more overall lifestyles towards self-sufficiency.
Yeah.
And so even if they're doing gardens and they're starting to buy from small farms as well, across the board, and I've been reached out and be like, can we come visit, see your pigs, that kind of thing. Like, so there's so many opportunities where there is a group of people that just want to know more.
Yeah.
Like, they just want that exposure. You can just be like, oh, I just didn't, because honestly, sometimes, like, I love going to the place because, like, I just see, like, any little thing, a gate handle different, like, oh, that's how you rig that up?
Yeah.
I know what I'm doing now. That makes way more sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I still think it's great, though, if you can grow it at home, though, for the kids to see, because otherwise, even if you do it, even if they're just coming here and whatnot, they're seeing it at one stage of its growth. And I applaud the schools that try and do it,
Yep.
But the kids plant the seeds, and then all summer it's growing, and they're on summer vacation.
So you need a seed rack out there, and you charge them a fee for the charge of the school, or maybe the parents can sign up for it somehow as like a field trip, and then say, hey, as part of that fee, it covers the cost of the seeds.
Yeah.
So you're actually getting compensated basically for your time, and now you've planted the seeds, literally and figuratively, like for the kids to take them home, and they have that exposure year round, like the importance of farms. I just feel like there's so many ideas. There's only so much time, though.
Yeah. But just so then that way they get that realization of how long it takes for that tomato to produce or whatnot, and just
I
how
love
it
that
grows.
idea. Yeah.
Because I just even remember one of my friends, he bought a house a few years back, so he was finally able to start doing like his own gardening and whatnot, because he finally had his own property. And he was telling me, the first year I grew corn, I kept on watching it, and it was growing and growing, and it was getting tall. And he's like, but where's the corn? I don't see the corn on it, because he was looking at the top of the plant.
Sure.
You're
right.
Not down halfway up the plant. And it's just something that's so basic, for me, we've grown corn here, so it's like I've just seen it grown and then picked. I'm like, I don't even remember that being a question.
Right. Absolutely. 100%. Yeah. That's one of the things I find, like, doing videos over time, or like talking, like, I don't know there's so many things I take for granted. Yeah. And I don't remember what a novice, it's just a whole, because then it's like a whole new world of wonder. You're like, and I actually love, like, I hate doing monologues. I'd much rather talk to somebody and get questions. Because questions like, this is a problem, now I can solve this. Whereas, like I start giving a speech or something, or talking on a monologue, it's like, I don't even know if anybody cares about this. But once it gets to be like a question time, like, that's why kids are great, because they just like ask the craziest. You're like, I think I did went to Newburgh School years ago, and the students all wrote questions on a board. It's like pre-K or kindergarten. And it's just like, where do the pigs sleep at night? Like all these great questions I never even thought of. I'm like, what? I had a lady, an adult once, and she's like, because we had pictures online of the pigs, and they're in the hay, and she's like, they're not sleeping in mud, they're super clean. I'm like, they choose to stay dry and clean. They just go there to get cooled off. It's like that, just not knowing.
Yeah.
It's like everything you've seen in stories and like nursery rhymes and movies.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, pigs are always in mud. Like that's only just because of like the old constraints and the way they get portrayed. But like there's more to it.
It's that stereotype.
That's the word I was looking for.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, exactly.
So.
I love that. And honestly, maybe that's the way to go is...
And I think you'll find it gets worse. Like if you have the parents that have never had a garden,
Right.
and then they have the kids.
Yep.
It generationally.
Yep.
It gets worse. And that's not even, you can't really even be mad at the kids at that point.
Right, it's
But,
just,
it's just there's just this knowledge base that's just missed.
I think you're right. Maybe that is the way. Then it's just really the seeds of the future is really just starting with the kids and getting that growth cycle. And for the adults that are interested in just planting those seeds, maybe there's just that encouragement of more self-sufficiency.
Yeah.
Because really, it just like, I don't know, it just opens up so many more questions when you start playing in the soil and working with animals. And it's like, because I've always considered chickens as kind of like the gateway drug. People laying hens are crazy now. I think I was at Tractor Supply, and it was at one day I had to pick something up over there. And I don't usually go there because usually it's a pain in the ass whenever I go there. But they had something I needed, and I was talking to the guy because I think it's like fence posts or something silly. And he was saying that like pre-COVID they get like one tractor trailer load a week, and then during COVID it was like 3 tractor trailer trucks a week.
Yep.
It was like what? It was like most of it was like chicks, and they went from like doing chicks just in the springtime to like almost like from spring right to like September.
Yeah.
It was like holy smokes, it was like crazy.
Yeah.
It was just wild. And people would buy them and then like call a couple days later like they're dead. Like, are they in the light? Like just like had no lights, no water, like just complete naive, ignorant of whatever they need to do. Just no research done. They're just like, oh, we'll just buy chicks and just like, but the naive of whatever responsibilities they had to do was like kind of heartbreaking. Like, ugh.
It's heartbreaking, yeah.
You're like, man, this could have been avoided.
Yeah. But then the problem with that is, though, then that happens to them. They get discouraged with it.
Yep.
And they say, no, I don't want to do it anymore.
Yep.
So,
yep. There's a lot of that. Yeah, so I don't know. So then we just need to set a better example and try to reach as many as we can.
Yeah.
All right, I'm on board with that. Well, shit, man. I'm still working on that problem because it's still like, I think there is some truth to that about trying to like encourage an early age of awareness and get them going for sure. And maybe that's just it's a long-term strategy because there's so many times I feel like like I don't necessarily want us to regress, but I feel like lately I'm like a Luddite where I just want to be like, stop doing things. Like I don't necessarily need to be Amish. I don't, I still like my truck and
yeah. I still like technology.
I don't know where the line is.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but maybe that's just as simple as encouraging the future. I don't know. I think you're onto something.
Right.
Well, I really appreciate the time checking things out. It's been the history of everything.
Yeah.
Was there anything we didn't cover?
I don't think so. There's always more that you can cover.
Yeah, I'll think of it. I do want to check out that egg vending machine.
Yeah.
And I'd like to check out that picture from 1914.
Yeah, we can do that.
It's pretty cool. And I'd like if we have time to check out some of those apple trees, make a couple shots of those.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool, the history that, and we can come back on another day too for all the photos if you get stuff going on. But it's cool seeing that whole history of 100 years. So do you guys do anything for like a 100-year anniversary?
We didn't. We knew that we should have, but it was just trying to think of something to do was so hard to celebrate it.
Yeah,
so,
sure.
But no, 100 years. So
that's awesome. Well, that's good to see, and hopefully it stays around for another 100 years.
It's the hope.
Well, thanks, man. So if folks want to reach out to you or have questions, what's the best way for them to do that?
Right now it's probably by phone. The number is 207-862-3633. 3246. I may not answer right away, but I do tend to check it every couple of days at this point, just because we are closed.
Sure.
But otherwise, we reopen for next year on May 1st.
May 1st.
Yep.
Good deal. All right, man. Well, then we'll wrap up there and go take a look at things.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you. Thanks, guys. We'll be up soon. We'll see you all later. Bye.